Good evening and welcome to the Bloggers Magazine here on I-24 News, where we bring you a different perspective on social stories and trends from the Middle East. Every year, on May 15, Palestinians and some Arab Israeli citizens commemorate Nakba Day, which signifies their displacement before and after Israel's declaration of independence. The international press, as always, will talk about Palestinians, will talk about Israelis, but rarely do they cover the complicated reality of the Arab minority within Israel. To discuss this today, we have two special guests with us. Duna Hijazi, on my right here. Thank you for coming in, Duna.
Hi.
And Amir Badran.
Hi, thank you.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
All right, so to set the stage for today's discussion, let's take a look at today's post.
20% of Israeli citizens are non-Jewish citizens who have remained on their land since 1948. They are called and call themselves a variety of titles: Arab Israelis, Palestinians of Israel, Arab Palestinians, Israeli Arabs, or just Arabs. They are the minority that is least talked about in the Israel-Palestinian conflict, and that is often ignored. So who are they? They are 70% Muslims and 9% Christian. Within Israel, they go to different schools where they learn Hebrew from a young age. They generally don't go to the army, they can vote, and are represented in government, but within their communities, they are often conflicted about whether to participate in government at all. 70% of them feel like second-class citizens in a country whose national identity is defined by Judaism. This would explain why Salim Jubran, a Supreme Court judge, didn't sing Israel's national anthem during an official event, perhaps because it's about the Jewish national identity. The best way to dissect this group's identity crisis is by examining where they can travel. For instance, traveling to Europe and Argentina with an Israeli passport is much easier than with Palestinian papers. But speaking Arabic is not enough to be able to travel to Algeria or Iraq, where an Israeli passport is automatically denied. While 250,000 Palestinians live in Lebanon, some of which are relatives of Arab Israelis can't travel there. On the other hand, Arab Israelis are allowed to unofficially travel to the West Bank, while Jewish Israelis can be convicted by the Israeli Authority for doing just that. To demonstrate how twisted this can all get, the popular Middle Eastern show Arab Idol does not allow Israeli Arabs to participate, despite the fact that the biggest Arab Idol star is Mohammed Asaf from Gaza, who performs to thousands in Cairo, Ramallah, and yes, also to Nazareth.
All right, so in a poll taken recently, 43% of Arab Israelis call themselves Israeli Palestinians, 32% Arab Israeli, and 22% just Palestinians. So I guess my first question, and let's begin with you, Amir. How do you define yourself?
I am born as a Palestinian, because this is a fact.
Mm-hmm.
But I am an Israeli citizen because I'm living in Israel and I'm holding an ID, an Israeli ID. I have my duties and I have my rights. Being Palestinian and being a citizen of the Israeli state isn't very simple. It's very complicated when you have to explain it to people living abroad.
Mm-hmm.
Israel and Palestine, it's a very small place when you look on the globe.
Yeah.
In general. So
even if you put the two together.
Yeah, even if you put both of them together. So I'm very happy when people know where we are in the globe, and then we should explain a little bit more about who we are and what we are, and this very complicated matter about being a minority, Palestinian minority, having papers, official papers of the state of Israel, right, and living not in the West Bank and in Gaza, but inside of Israel, and when you talk about Jaffa, even more, because they speak about Tel Aviv.
Yeah, but I'm curious to see what Duna has to say.
Well, personally, I do see myself as an Arab Palestinian woman living in Israel. It was really hard to grasp my identity and taking into consideration all the complexity of the situation. But I think my definition presents me in the best way. Yeah.
So it's more Israel is just the place where
Yeah,
you
yeah,
reside more
yeah.
than a part of
I
your
think so.
identity. And the people around you, is it you'd say that your definition represents?
Well, I think in my environment, in my close environment, I think that the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But
You know what? Sorry to
Okay.
interrupt, but let's take a quick look at this YouTube video by Corey Gill Schuster that asks students these questions.
I'm from Israel, but I'm Palestinian in origin.
I am a Palestinian who lives in Israel against her will.
אני אומר אני ערבי אבל גר במדינת ישראל.
Like I'm in Jordan or Egypt. I'm always afraid to say Nazareth. They're like, oh, they freak out.
Really?
So I say the Holy Land.
كلا المجزرة العربية تسلينو كشيء كدير تسمين توب. كما زي عربي إسرائيلي أو عربي فلسطيني زي كيلو لو سيد زي بديوك تشوفها بديوك.
Yeah, so this is definitely a question that many people struggle with, and I'm curious why. Because is there a problem being an Palestinian living in Israel? Is there discrimination that you feel?
Well, of course, being a Palestinian living in a Jewish state, discrimination is like part of your daily life, almost daily life.
Yeah.
Everybody, every Palestinian Arab, at some point of his life, has to go through a discrimination in jobs, in finding jobs, in traveling, and in daily life. I mean, that is quite normal.
Yeah. Some would say that currently in the world would discriminate against Arabs. Do you think that it's stronger in Israel?
I really think it's stronger in Israel because, I lived in France for 5 years, and in the whole 5 years, I've never been asked to present my identity card wherever I went. I was a student, but nevertheless, when I come back to Israel and I'm living here I was born here in Israel. And I can see that if I'm walking the street and I don't have the right color, I might be asked for my identity card. And if my wife is wearing a hijab, so automatically we are pulled aside, and everything should be checked twice.
Yeah.
And we are taken to another room, and we are subject to some questions that people are not asked, and some of the questions are very painful and not
Personal.
personal.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you a different kind of personal question. Do you vote? Because in the voting process in Israel, some Arabs, Israelis vote, some don't. How about you?
Of course, I do vote, and I was lately elected to as a member, as a council member in the Tel Aviv municipality.
Right.
So of
Duna?
course.
Of course, I do vote, but
Alright.
I
'Cause
think we need to say that
yeah.
we do not represent the whole Palestinian
Yeah,
people
well,
here.
let's talk about that. Let's move on to today's portrait. Since the inception of Israel's parliament, which is called the Knesset, there have been Arab parties. In Israel's last election, 56% of Arab citizens voted compared to the 67% of the general population. And today, the three mainstream Arab parties hold 11 of the 120 seats in parliament. One of the parliamentary aides in the Knesset is Bashar Iraqi, an Arab Israeli citizen who is critical of Israel but hopes to bring change from within. Let's take a look at this piece by Ron Friedman.
Last week, Israel celebrated its Independence Day, but Bashar Iraqi did not take part in the festivities. While most Israelis were barbecuing or taking the family to watch the military air show, Iraqi was leading a group of children on a march to mark Nakba Day, commemorating what the Arabs call their catastrophe, which accompanied the formation of the Jewish state. Born and raised in the Arab city of Tira, Iraqi says he experienced firsthand the pain of discrimination.
I feel as a second-class citizen. I can see that I'm a second-class citizen, and this is how the government and the country treats me. You don't need to be a nuclear scientist to tell the difference between an Arab city in Israel and a Jewish Israeli city in Israel. The infrastructure, the education system, the health system, the funds that we receive are all pointing towards discrimination and racism against the minority of Palestinians living in Israel.
Iraqi's experiences and his family's history shaped his identity. He rejects the label of Israeli Arab, preferring to define himself as a Palestinian living in Israel.
I can't say I'm Israeli and feel very comfortable about it. I can say I live in Israel and I hold an Israeli citizenship, which is reality. I am a Palestinian and I belong to the Palestinian nation.
Others may have been content to wallow in victimhood, but that's not Iraqi's style. Every day he gets up and makes his way to the Knesset, where he works as a personal advisor for an Arab lawmaker, aiming to use whatever means necessary to improve the fate of his people.
If no one is doing it for you, you have to stand up and do it for yourself. Injustice and discrimination will always be here in Israel or somewhere else. What we're trying to do is what the government is not doing for us. What we're trying to bring to the community is what the government usually bring to the people. The Knesset members, Arab Knesset members, been in the Knesset since the establishment of the country. 66 years of Arab politicians taking part of the Knesset. And they are doing their job. They are using every tool they are offered and every tool that they can get from the position they are at.
In addition to his work in parliament, Iraqi also founded a non-profit organization aimed at educating and empowering the youth of his city.
I wanted to recognize the rights as Palestinians, as Arabs in this country, and at the same time, I wanted to recognize the rights as Israelis. I wanted to understand what is it to be an Israeli, what is it to be a citizen of a country in general. The goal is to make these kids feel strong enough to believe in their own selves and to fight for a better life.
But it's not only his people who have to strive for better. Iraqi demands change also from the Jewish majority of Israel.
It's time for them to stand up and say, we're doing something wrong. And I'm not talking about occupying the West Bank. I'm not talking about wars against different countries. I'm talking about a community that shares the land, air, and food inside the same borders of the same country they live at.
All right, let's allow me to play devil's advocate for a moment there, because one of the things that are often said is that if you were living in the Palestinian territories or in any of our neighboring countries, your quality of life, your personal liberties wouldn't be as wonderful as they are now, supposedly. What do you think about that?
Well, it's something that is usually said by Israelis, and I totally do not agree with that. It's not even a fair comparison. I mean, that's my land, that's where I live, that's where I was born here, and I am expecting to get a full rights, just as a Jewish citizen would get. So I don't think that we can make that comparison. I mean, I do aim for a better life here. And we can't keep just saying this. It's not gonna get us anywhere in solving our case.
I understand. Amir, what do you think?
I totally agree with Duna. I think that the comparison is really taken off for a big mistake. I don't know why is this comparison is done. So because you know, if you want to compare yourself, you have to compare yourself with something really better than you, so you can achieve even more. And you do not compare yourself for something less and say you have to be grateful for because I'm giving you this minimum of thing. So
right.
This is not.
I understand. Said Kashua is an Israeli-born Palestinian journalist. A few years ago, he created what is now a popular TV show on Israel's national channel 2. It's called Avoda Aravit, which translates to Arab labor. Let's take a look.
עוד פעם בבוקר גילית שאתה ערבי והתבאסת?
עזוב, גם מקלחת כמו בן אדם אין לי.
לא הלכה לעירייה כבר לסדר את זה?
התקשרתי מיליון פעם, לא עונה.
התקשרתי? תגיד לי, 60 שנות אזרחות יהודית לא למדתם כלום עלינו?
מה זאת אומרת?
אם אתה לא מגיע לשם ועומד על שלך, ומתחיל להרים צעקות ומרים שולחנות, אף אחד לא יזרוק עליך זין. איפה אתה חי, תגיד לי?
שכונה ערבית.
שכונה ערבית. הקפה!
גברת, אני אזרח ומשלם מיסים, ואין שום סיבה בעולם שלא אוכל לישון בשקט כמו כל אזרח הגון במדינה. כן! בושה וחרפה למנוע משליש מהאוכלוסייה את מנעמי המקלחת. אני לא אסכים שום סיבה שבעולם שלא יהיה לי זרם מים כזה גם בביתי. לא, אני לא אצא מכאן. לא אצא מכאן. אני דורש שבעיית המים...
So what do you think? Do you think that there's a chance at some point we can bridge this cultural divide, Amir?
As an optimistic guy, I think there's always the chance, but the chance itself isn't enough, because what is needed is awareness and goodwill.
So, Duna, what do you think? Are you optimistic about the future?
Well, I think I can say that I'm realistically optimistic. I do think that there's a chance for a better future for mutual living and coexistence. But first, there has to be a recognition in our Nakba, in the rights of the return, in so many aspects of our life here. But generally, yes, I'm optimistic.
Thank you, Duna and Amir, for being here today. And I'd like to thank you at home for watching us. Join us again next week for a whole new Bloggers.